Just back from the pee break. Even Martians have to pee. Yesterday, I think you guys saw me do this piece over here, but like a disease, it spread across the tail section of the thing. Anyway, I went and I did a larger area, and I did a preliminary sanding of it. It feels pretty smooth, but there's plenty of defects going on here. All of this stuff is still pretty rough. So I'm making, you know, when you mix the plastic up, your ass is on fire at that point because you know it's going to set up and it goes right out of your head what you needed to do. So what I'll do is I'll take a pencil and I'll just mark off some areas that I know need it, which is up here. It's little tiny scratches. I don't know if you can even see them on the camera. Take a look at this. This had a lot of, because the sun was directly hitting this, we got a lot more cracks and things happening up here. And this will be the next batch of Bondo. I'll go and I'll do this. I'll probably follow onto the back of the tail as well. But let's do this one little section here, and then we can keep going with that. Now, one thing that I didn't mention before that I should have is there's different grades, different grit of sandpaper that I've been using, and I guess it's really a matter of your taste, what you like. You'll have to try different sandpapers out. But for smoothing out, I mean, nice, like if I want to get it really smooth like glass, I'll use a 220 grit sandpaper. And if I really need to chew into it, which you'll see me doing later on some of the larger areas where I'm looking for high points and low points, and that's really interesting. Where do you see it? I've been using, it's an 80 grit, and you can see how rough that is. Now, another thing that I found that's really great is instead of buying my sandpaper in squares like this, there's a couple of companies that sell them in strips, which is really much handier, especially if you're using sanding blocks, like so. And we'll get into sanding blocks later. It's totally invaluable. I never would have known how important it was. It would have made such a huge difference. So, okay, what am I doing here? I think I'm probably ready to go with some Bondo. Oh, and one other thing. This sandpaper, this is a wet or dry sandpaper. That means that you could have a bucket to get really smooth, glassy surfaces, and we'll be looking at this also. And you'll be seeing it with me for the first time pretty much, because if you sand with a wet sandpaper, you can get a really, really super smooth surface. It's really amazing the difference that it makes. I mean, you can get it to look like glass. So it's not your normal sandpaper like you would sand the wall in the house with. It's a wet or dry sandpaper. I think some people refer to it as emery cloth. As a matter of fact, yes, it's emery cloth. Emery cloth. I wonder who Emery was. You know, part of the reason why I changed careers so often, you know, like I was a makeup artist, and then I went to the art department, a scenic, and illustrator, visual, because I get really uncomfortable at a certain point in my career where people, like if you've been doing it like 10 years, people expect you to have all the answers, and I really demand the right to be stupid. And if I start to get too good at a job, it's time to move on. Does that make sense? It's kind of cute. This is actually masking tape left over from the Enterprise art department, believe it or not. So it has special juju. I can feel a high point right here, but we'll get that later. You know, the thing is, you can't, or I've been discovering this, you have to keep moving forward. You could become obsessed with a part of it, and it's the same actually in any job I've ever done. Part of the trick is knowing when to move on, because if you're working on a film job, you're not going to get weeks and weeks to do your design or do your work. And it's just overall, general, it's a good idea to keep pushing forward. You know, I read a pamphlet that Ray Bradbury wrote about writing, and he said the same exact thing. He said, you'll think it into the ground. He says, just get on the remember what typewriters are? Get on the typewriter and just go, you know, be a house on fire. And then you can go back and then you can pick out your mistakes and fix them. But if you try to get everything perfect before moving on, forget it. So, I mean, I could feel that there's things here that need to be taken care of. It might need the rotary sander, but I'm just going to keep moving forward, and once I get a coat of paint on it, I'll see whether it really does need the rotary sander, because there's different levels of perception when you're looking at these things. I mean, I found that if I come out at 7:30 in the morning and I get that light at 7:30, for some reason, all of a sudden I can see every boo-boo, where later on in the day there's more light bouncing around. I don't know, you know, Michelangelo, when he used to go to the quarry and pick out a block of marble, used to go like first thing in the morning, probably around 7:30 in the morning, because there's something special about that light that he was able to see into the marble and see if there were defects or cracks or things that went wrong. But anyway, I sure know how to blather. And you see those lines between the layers? That's what I'm not supposed to do. The only way to avoid that is to do one, let it set, then come back and do another one. But, you know, sometimes you just can't help yourself.
Like just then?
Just like that. Idiot.
It's a compulsive disorder. It's okay, people.
Idiot. If you don't use a sanding block and you just use your hands, you end up getting high points and low points. Now ordinarily you could get away with a dust mask for doing this, but because I just did this, it's fuming. Remember that plastic is going to be giving off gas for hours, especially while it's setting. So if you're going to be doing any sanding on it while it's still fresh, use your respirator. That's my advice. This is another kind of sanding block, and it's a cylinder. So if I have these tight curves, I can get into them a little better. This is pretty smooth. See? That's a Lake Bondo. Anywhere the
surface fell below sea level, Bondo filled it in.
Put your 3D glasses on now. It'll look like his hand's coming right out of the screen at you.
Oh! That's kind of the Martian equivalent of swinging in on a vine. Anyway, I couldn't wait. I'm sorry. I told you that it could happen. I'm a very impatient person. But after you guys left yesterday, I sanded a little more, and I went back and I gave it one coat of primer. And you know what? It looks a lot better than I expected it to look. It's pretty good. But that doesn't mean we're done. There's going to be the next step from here is that I will use one of these wide sanding blocks, and the graphite, the amazing magical graphite, which you guys will see how it works, and it really is a huge help. Okay, so that's just a kind of a sample of basic sanding in Bondo, and we're going to get more in depth in later tapes. The really heavy duty patching, sorry Scott, I didn't take video of that, but you'll just have to fill it in your brain. I know you have an imagination, so you just picture it, okay? So here we go. Better than I expected, and I'm basically happy, so let's move on.